safe. We've learned that conclusively. The failures of the Broward County Police during the Parkland, Florida shooting are well known. But last weekend's shooting at a Tennessee Waffle House also exposed a wave of government miscues. Trace Gallagher has more details on that tonight. Hey, Trace.
Hi, Tucker. During the high school massacre in Parkland, Florida, Broward County Sheriff's deputies reportedly took cover behind cars and trees, even though one deputy knew where the shooter was. Coral Springs police now say they saw deputies taking shelter while they rushed past them to get inside the school. This report is on top of that surveillance video and dispatch audio that shows Broward County School Resource Deputy Scott Peterson also not entering the school building despite seeing the shooter in the stairwell. Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel said at the time that he was sick to his stomach that Peterson didn't go inside. But now the rank and file of the Broward Sheriff's Office are taking a no confidence vote on Sheriff Israel, and a big component of the vote is that Sheriff placed the blame on Deputy Peterson instead of waiting for the investigation to be finalized. Sheriff Israel calls the vote a union ploy to get a pay raise. Meantime, prior to the Nashville Waffle House shooting, police had numerous contacts with suspect Travis Reinking, including days before the attack when Reinking allegedly stole a car and police gave chase, but then called off the pursuit to track the car using GPS. In 2016 and 2017, Reinking told police in Illinois and Colorado that music star Taylor Swift was stalking him. He was later arrested by Secret Service for violating White House security. And when the FBI learned that Reinking owned 4 weapons, including an AR-15 rifle, they had Illinois police revoke his gun card and turn the weapons over to his father. The dad gave the guns back and could now face charges. And finally, 7 months, we should note, after the Vegas shooting, some 700-plus hours of video and 2,000 911 calls remain largely unseen and unheard. Tucker.
Trace Gallagher with details. Thanks a lot, Trace, as always. We remember Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel thoroughly discredited himself with his handling of the Parkland shooting, where at a CNN gun control rally, he attempted to vilify gun owners as a group while simultaneously heaping credit on himself like a megalomaniac. Now, Sheriff Israel is facing a vote of no confidence from his own deputies. Jeff Bell is a deputy sheriff and president of the Broward Sheriff's Office Deputies Association, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Bell, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So, facing a vote of no confidence for what? Why do you have no confidence?
Well, there's a series of events that have led up to this vote of no confidence, and it has nothing to do with a contract whatsoever. That is a blatant lie by the sheriff himself. But this is about a series of events over the past couple of years, such as bad policies of the Promise program and the civil citation program that takes all discretion away from deputies to make the arrests that we need to make. It's about the lack of training facilities, not having our own gun range to properly train for these situations. It's about the distrust between the Sheriff's Office and the union when the Sheriff's Office asked for our help to raise property taxes on citizens because they claim to be broke, but yet we're only to find out after completing an audit that the Sheriff's Office returned $100 million back to the County Commission alone last year. And then it's the discovery of the misuse of taxpayer money by the Broward Sheriff's Office by providing private entities such as Napa Auto Parts with free gas cards from the Sheriff's Office, where we've identified through public records requests that they, in 1 year alone, they obtained 6,000 gallons of gasoline from our gas pumps. That is a fleecing of Broward County. And then also on top of it, the disparity of treatment and punishment between the command staff if they were to commit felonies and untruthfulness compared to a deputy is a far great time span of what punishment we will get between the rank and file and the command staff.
So
that
what
has led to this no confidence.
Well, that's quite a litany. I mean, what you're describing is a combination of incompetence and corruption. Call me cynical, but when you watched Sheriff Israel lay the entire blame for the shooting on Middle America, because ordinary law-abiding people have too many guns in his view, did it seem like an effort to distract from his own failures?
Absolutely it was, and you can see this pattern of this. There's Sheriff Israel back in his own Facebook post from February 24th of this year. He said that there was only one deputy on scene on the school during the entire attack. That's proven to be false. So he can't tell the truth about that event. Then he goes on a town forum and he blames the NRA. Then he blames one deputy, Scott Peterson, for this problem. Then he blames everybody else that he can for this problem. I understand that he can't be responsible for every employee, but at the end of the day, he needs to be accountable for his employees, and he's just not being accountable. And yes, this is some of the reasons why he needs to be removed from office.
Removed from office. And so accountability requires transparency. You have to know what someone's doing in order to evaluate it. And you just heard Trace Gallagher say that there are many video and audio tapes that the public still has not seen. Why is that?
Well, they don't want to be transparent because it's going to expose that the sheriff knew some information in the past, that he contradicted himself in public interviews, and that's going to come back and bite him on that. However, we're going to press forward for more transparency with the sheriff, the same way that he claims to be the most transparent sheriff that's ever been in the sheriff's office. It goes both ways, Sheriff, and you need to be transparent. Release those videos so we can know the truth. Now, if this vote of no confidence goes forward and it turns out the way that the membership is voicing their opinion towards us, then we'll take that information to the governor's office and we'll support him with whatever decision he wants to make. But if he chooses to remain sheriff with Scott Israel, then that means that the governor agrees that Sheriff Israel is an amazing leader, which he's not. And be forewarned that when the next incident happens, if the governor leaves him there, it will be on the hands of Governor Scott, not the employees at the Broward Sheriff's Office.
Well, I'm so glad you're bringing this to our attention. It's a shame, though, we had to wait months to hear it from a law enforcement officer, and that CNN, which hosted this gun control rally and put Israel at the center of it, never asked a single skeptical question about his behavior. It's frustrating, but I'm glad the truth is coming out, and I'm glad you're telling our viewers about it. Mr. Bell, thank you.
Thank you.
Kyle Kashev was there that day at Parkland. He's a survivor of the shooting. He's a high school student in Parkland. He says he was recently called in for questioning by school officials for daring to go to a gun range with his dad. Kyle joins us tonight. So Kyle, thank you for coming on. Am I misstating that? Tell us what you did that earned you a trip to visit with armed authorities at your school. What was your crime?
It wasn't even a trip. It was an interrogation. It was a clear attempt to intimidate me, and they used very, very, very harsh intimidation tactics. I mean, at the end of the day, I went shooting with my dad at a gun range. I mean, I did everything peacefully. And I went shooting with my dad, and I did absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, I posted a video of me showing my admiration for the Second Amendment and telling people to educate themselves about the Second Amendment, because we can't trust our government to defend ourselves.
So you went to a gun range with your dad, which I think is still legal in this country, and you'd think that we would encourage this because you learn gun safety and how to handle a gun appropriately. You didn't misuse it. You got called in and interrogated. What questions could they have asked you? What would be the interrogation?
So I come into the office, okay, and it was all very, very weird. I sit down, and the school resource officer goes like this. He says, "Kyle, you're taking 5 AP classes. You're such a good student. Why would you do something like this?" And I was in shock. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, why'd you do something like this? And they came in there with the notion that I had done something wrong by going to a gun range. So I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you tweeted out a video of you at a range." I said, "Did you see the tweet?" He said, "No, I didn't see the tweet. I don't do Twitter." So I'm like, "Well, then check the tweet." The tweet in itself was a video of me shooting a firearm, telling people to educate themselves about the Second Amendment. So we talk back and forth, and then the Broward Sheriff's officer comes into the room. He comes in the room. He sits right behind me, very, very, very close. And then the interrogation truly starts. They go, "Whose gun is it? Who'd you shoot it with? Why'd you shoot it? Who'd you shoot it with? Is it your gun? Is it your dad's gun? When did you go?" And at this entire time, I was like, did I do anything wrong? I mean, it's still America. Last time I checked, I can go to a gun range and shoot it peacefully. And then I said, "What? Like, did I do anything wrong?" And they said, "Don't get snappy with me." And then I was like, "All right, can I record this?" And they said, "No." And I mean, in reality,
they did not allow you to record the conversation. Why?
Nope. I explicitly asked. I asked the school resource officer, "May I record this?" And he said, "No."
And you told them, you were clear that you were with your father.
Mm-hmm. And that they were they tried to somewhat tell me, or to intimidate me, to somehow incriminate my father. It was a real push. They came in there like knowingly saying that I was at fault for exercising my Second Amendment right at a gun range. And it comes down to this. why should I be interrogated for peacefully going to a gun range? I asked them, I was like, did I do anything wrong? They said, no, you're not a threat. So why are they calling down me? Why are they calling down me? Is every single individual going to a gun range going to be called down? What is the end to it? Because it's a clear road to tyranny.
Well, maybe because I have children, I sympathize with your father. He's an adult American citizen, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, he has a right to take his son where he wants within the bounds of the law without getting second-guessed by some school person. I mean, it's pretty...
Absolutely.
Finally and quickly, what did he say about this?
My dad has been in shock. He doesn't understand how something so small can turn into something like, why was my son being interrogated? The school resource officer hadn't even called my father about this. They didn't even know I was going to meet him.
Yeah.
They didn't know this.
Yeah, because they don't care about his rights as a parent at all. Kyle, thanks a lot. That's quite a story, and I appreciate your telling it.
I mean, Tucker. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We got a Fox News alert for you. The Trumps and the Macrons have arrived at the state dinner at the White House. This visit has been getting a lot of attention today. Earlier today, social media went wild over the hat the First Lady was wearing. There's the famous hat. Just moments ago, the first couples were escorted in by an honor guard, as is tradition. We're going to listen in for a moment. We'll continue to follow that dinner, including the formal toasts as the night goes on. We've got cameras there. Of course, we'll bring it all to you live right here on Fox. Up next, MS-13 gang members in Long Island say it is time to murder a police officer or two, just like they do in El Salvador. Quote, by the way. That story's next. We've got a Fox News alert for you. The Central American migrant caravan was supposed to have broken up by Mexican authorities. That was the news, but of course it's not true. About 300 members of that caravan van have arrived in Tijuana, right on the border of San Diego, our busiest border crossing in this country. According to reports, they plan to seek asylum in the U.S. tomorrow, though the Trump administration has vowed to swiftly deport those claims, and they will be rejected and kicked out. We'll see if that happens. Of course, it won't happen. We can tell that to you pretty conclusively, but we'll follow it, and we'll tell you what does happen. Meanwhile, MS-13 has been terrorizing ordinary people, mostly immigrants, by the way, in this country for years. It's the deadliest gang in America, and it seems to be turning its sights against American law enforcement. That's not our take. That's what they're saying. In recent weeks, Long Island police have arrested several gang members, and according to an informant, leaders are telling their foot soldiers, quote, it is time to take the streets back and shoot a cop like we do in El Salvador. They shoot a lot of cops in El Salvador. They run the country. Patrick Ryder is commissioner of the Nassau County Police Department, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Ryder, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, sir, for having us.
So our understanding of MS-13 is up until now, they've committed a lot of crimes, a number of high-profile killings, but mostly they haven't targeted law enforcement. You think that's changing?
Well, we got our threat last Wednesday. They decided that they were going to put out notice to their foot soldiers that you were going to take a cop's life, just like they do in El Salvador.
So why the change?
They don't like the fact that we've increased our enforcement. We're going after the MS-13 and all our gangs out here in Long Island. So from the increased enforcement, they decided they were going to act back. Well, in return, we're going to act back.
Where are these people coming from?
Most of them are crossing from the borders of both Mexico and Texas. They find their way up into the New York area where there is work for most migrant workers.
Yes.
But again, those who don't join the gangs, they get threatened by the gangs to join them. And they go after the young kids and try to flip them.
So you've seen, and you may have missed this since you're busy enforcing the law, but here in Washington, MS-13 has had, in effect, some high-profile defenders who have said it's wrong, it's immoral, it's probably bigoted, actually, to target MS-13 because they're immigrants. How would you respond to that?
I spend a lot of time in the Hispanic community. And these leaders in the community, they don't want them there. They don't want no part of them in their community. And unfortunately, they're given safe haven with their own, and they're protected because they threaten others, And then they're taking the threat to us. We're going to take it back to them.
Well, you're looking at pictures there on the screen. We went to El Salvador last summer, and that's a holding facility with MS-13 members. MS-13 has a huge role in effect, running El Salvador. It's a pretty varsity operation. They kill cops regularly there and put many others on the take. Are you worried about the gang metastasizing and turning really violent? I mean, do you think your informant could be predicting the future?
Our informants are, both of those threats that we receive are credible. We went out and we gave the enforcement. We are concerned, obviously, for the officers' safety. All of our officers, both here, Nassau County, the state of New York, and the country. Whatever color uniform you wear, we have to defend that. We are the first line of defense in this country from these gang members that want to take, again, up these locations and start enforcing their violence. So we have to bring back a message to them that will not be accepted.
Well, if you maintain that level of self-confidence, you'll win. And I hope that politicians don't force you to dial it back, because I think you're right. Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
MS-13 isn't the only threat America has brought in from abroad, imported. Terrorism is a largely immigrant phenomenon, not exclusively, but largely, with immigrants and their children committing or attempting dozens of terror attacks in recent years. The question is, what can we do about it, and do we have a right to vet people with that in mind? David Beer is an immigration policy analyst for the Cato Institute, a libertarian organization, and he recently wrote a study arguing that America doesn't need stronger vetting processes for immigrants. Mr. Beer joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on. So the first question, and since you're a libertarian and all libertarians are smart and they thought this through,
Sure.
Let me ask you a philosophical question, which is, doesn't a country have a right to know all it can or cares to learn about the people it admits?
Of course, and libertarians support vetting immigrants and travelers who come to the United States. And look, one of the reasons why I did this analysis, this study of vetting failures, is that President Trump actually required in his first travel ban executive order that the government undertake a study of vetting failures, and it failed to do so. And so in light of that failure, I undertook this study, and it shows that vetting failures are extremely rare. 1 in every 29 million visa or status approvals is for a person who had terrorist inclinations, who goes on to commit a terrorist offense in the United States, including sending small amounts of money overseas to terrorist organizations.
Okay.
And that's 84% lower than the rate before 9/11, and that shows.
Great.
Sure, and that shows that vetting can result in improvements and without bans on nationalities or
Sure,
religions.
but we're not really going for improvements, are we? We're going for perfect. I mean, that's kind of our government's duty, is to do all it can to protect
the
us.
goal,
So the
of course.
rights of people of other countries who want to move here aren't really germane to that. Our job is not to protect their rights, is to protect the safety and the rights of Americans.
of course.
So Omar Mateen, for example, I don't think he was the Pulse nightclub guy.
No, he was not a vetting failure. He was born in the United States.
Right,
And
but he was born to Afghan immigrants who were Taliban sympathizers.
Okay.
So that was a result of an immigration failure. So you let people in with radical sympathies, and as a result of that, you get a nightclub shooting. I don't really see another. I mean, he wasn't actually a product of American culture. He was a radical Muslim.
He was not a product of a failed vetting system. He was born in the United States. He was raised here. That is a problem of assimilation with his parents. But you have to look at the study that I conducted also looked at all types of threats from U.S.-born people as well as people who are born abroad.
There are a lot of threatening Americans.
And they are very, very low on the risk of
but the overwhelming majority
more than 200,000 Americans have been killed in regular homicides.
I'm fully aware. Look,
over the last 15 years.
But this is a specious argument. You're saying that because there are a lot of dangerous Americans, and there definitely are, that we shouldn't be concerned about dangerous immigrants because they're look. How about this? Anybody who wins the privilege to come here and take American benefits, which are very generous, as you know, should be not only a non-threat, should be a demonstrable net asset to the country. And yet we think it's somehow immoral to demand that.
No, the argument here is whether or not the vetting system as it currently exists is good at excluding people who have violent
But wait a second, you can make gross
not.
distinctions here. So if you just said, look at Great Britain, look at France, look at Sweden, they have massive terror, crime, and disorder problems and cultural assimilation problems for one reason. They imported a bunch of people from a part of the world that doesn't share their values. Why wouldn't you look at, you wouldn't want to live in Sweden now as a result. You wouldn't want to live in London as a result. So why shouldn't we look at that and say, I don't care, we're not going along with that, because we know how it winds up.
Well, you know, if you look at the conviction rate for all crimes committed by people who are targeted by the president's executive order, they're far less likely to commit crimes of all types than native-born Americans.
You know, I don't actually think that number. I think unfortunately, we don't have time to sort of unpack that. Let me just say for the record, I disagree with that. I think you're using a bad number there.
Fine.
But any crimes is too many. And again, people from certain regions are far more likely, we both agree, to commit certain types of crimes motivated by Islamic extremism. Right.
And it's very, very uncommon. 1 in 328
So we should
million.
worry about it? Is that what you're saying?
No. My argument is that we should worry about it. We should have vetting system, but they should be targeted to specific identified deficiencies in the system. We should target areas of improvement with evidence, not through intuition.
Well, here's the evidence. Here's the evidence, actually. We have Western societies, I just named 3 of them in Europe, that have been destroyed by this. So what's your conclusion?
France is not a non-society
how about
anymore.
Sweden, which had like a negligible crime rate? Now it has grenade attacks to the point it's one of the most dangerous countries in Europe. Do you see any connection between that and their immigration policy?
So the United States does have a better system of assimilation than other European, other developed countries.
Is there any lesson from that? Oh, so we're more efficient than the Swedes? Is that what you're saying? Because I don't believe you.
We are far better at assimilating immigrants in the United States, so including Muslim immigrants who have assimilated quite rapidly into American society.
So there's no obvious lesson from Sweden that you see at all.
The United States has a completely different immigration system, different assimilation system, and the evidence in the United States right now shows that they are less likely to commit
low
crimes.
levels. Look, I hope you. Look, I want you to be right. I want you to be right. We're unfortunately out of time.
Sure.
I'm rooting for your vision, which I think is wrong, but I'm hoping you're right. I really am. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
The Republican Party has a master plan for winning this fall. Just run against Hillary Clinton again. Why aren't they running against their actual opponent, the actual Democratic Party, which has changed completely and is now a threat to all of us? Good question. We'll ask that of Congressman Jim Jordan coming up. Well, according to a recent report here at Fox, Republican Party leaders have a secret plan to win the 2018 midterms. Instead of telling voters what they would do with another 2 years in office, they've decided to run once again against Hillary Clinton, the former Democratic nominee. It worked last time. The idea is it'll work again. The appeal is obvious. Nobody really likes Hillary Clinton, even people who are paid to pretend they like her. The downside is it's not really a relevant argument. Hillary Clinton doesn't run anything anymore. She doesn't represent the modern Democratic Party. They've moved on to another planet, and that's the point. Democratic leaders are now saying things far more extreme than anything a Midwestern Methodist like Hillary Clinton ever would have said or thought. They become openly bigoted, for example, blaming an entire ethnic group for the country's problems. They've called for eliminating our country's borders, the right to self-defense, even the distinction between male and female. They're at war with nature and with common sense. And by the way, they're agitating for an actual war against Russia. They are insane. Some of them are dangerous, and somebody ought to run against them, not against the ghost of some elderly retired nominee from last cycle. Yet somehow the Republicans in Congress say they're not going to do that. Are they? We have someone to tell us. Congressman Jim Jordan is a Republican who represents the proud state of Ohio, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thank you for coming on.
You bet. Good to be with you.
So, look, I don't want to poo-poo the idea of running against Hillary. I love doing Hillary segments. Yeah. They're hilarious. They're a little mean, but it's fun. But the Democratic Party of right now is not the party of Hillary Clinton.
Right.
It's an openly extremist, racist party, I would argue. And I think it's obvious that Republicans in opposition should run against them, but why aren't they?
Well, I think what I would say is let's run for what we told them we were going to do in 16. Let's run on what we've accomplished. And I would argue 17 was a good year. Regulations were down, the taxes have been lowered, the economy was growing, ISIS is backpedaling, the embassy's going to Jerusalem, Gorsuch is on the court. That was a pretty darn good year.
Really? People voted to move the embassy to Jerusalem?
Well, all I'm saying is there are lots of Republicans who think that being being our best friend and ally in the Middle East, Israel, doing something like that makes sense. After all, every other capital in the world, that's where you're
Hey, look, I'm not against it. I mean, I
all
don't
I'm saying
care,
is 17 was a pretty good year. So far this year, we haven't been doing what we said. This spending bill we passed 4 weeks ago was not what we're supposed to be doing. So let's do what never hurts to keep your promises. Never hurts to do what you told them you were going to do and go run on that and run against what the left, the hard left, is pushing in their party. I think that's the winning message.
So if you had a political party that literally wanted to eliminate the differences between men and women and pretend that nature wasn't real.
Yeah, run against that. I'm all for it.
I haven't ever heard a Republican say, actually, men and women are different. That's a biological fact. And when you pretend otherwise, you destroy society.
Marriage should be what marriage has always been. Life should be protected.
Not even
I mean,
marriage.
all those things.
Like, the Democrats have gotten to the point where they are attacking people, trying to get them fired from their jobs for acknowledging there are biological differences between the sexes. Why do Republicans not make...
And they're going on college campuses, not letting people, conservatives, Christians, they're anti-Semitic stuff on college. They're stopping all those kind of things. Attacking the First Amendment. I think we should camp. We had Ben Shapiro, Adam Carolla come in a committee that I get the privilege of chairing, talking about what's going on college campuses, how radical it is, how anti-Semitic it is, how anti-Christian it is, how anti-conservative it is, and how anti-basic fundamental beliefs it is. So I'm all for that as well. But let's go do what we told them we were going to do, what they elected us to do in November of 2016, and let's show that contrast with what the radical left is pushing.
So I
agree.
Really, the 2016 election, if you could isolate one promise, obviously be the wall.
Of course. And we need to do that.
And that's been the one consistently ignored by Republicans in Congress. Like, we just had this massive spending bill, no wall.
We funded things in that bill we said we wouldn't. We didn't fund things we said, namely the wall. It was a $1.3 trillion bill that we had 15 hours to look at, 2,232 pages. And guess how long the debate was? 1 hour. 1 hour debate. We go home for Easter recess after that. We come back. We have 4 hours to debate a 3-page bill, balanced budget amendment, which is a great idea, but something everyone knows is not going to get through the Congress and become law. We debate that for 4 hours. That's what drives American voters crazy. They're like, really? No wonder they're cynical about Capitol Hill, cynical about Congress, cynical about what they see at this place. So that's the kind of stuff that has to change, because again, it's not consistent with what we... Let's actually fund the things we said we would, like the wall, and not fund things like Planned Parenthood, give them your tax dollars. That's ridiculous. We should stop that.
Why would, I don't want you to beat up on the speaker on his way out, but how do we wind up with a spending bill that funded Planned Parenthood for $500 million?
I don't know. You know what happened? We took 3 amendments. This is how bad it's gotten. We took 3 amendments to the Rules Committee the night before that vote. One of them was to deal with the Planned Parenthood issue. And all 3 amendments were not made in order. And you know why they weren't made in order? Because they would have passed. They would have passed on the House floor.
So whose response? Who did that?
That comes from the leadership telling the Rules Committee you can't make these things in order, because actually they would pass on the floor.
So Paul Ryan is more for Planned Parenthood than for the wall.
all I'm saying is he's more for getting something through that the swamp likes, mainly the United States Senate, because the argument is, oh, if you make those amendments in order, they will pass, the bill will go to the Senate, and they won't pass it. Well, I'm tired of that. Let's have the debate. And we were so poised to win, Tucker. Chuck Schumer shut down the government over a weekend over amnesty, and the American people said, we don't think that's a smart idea. We were poised to win. Instead, we did what the swamp always does. We spent more money on everything.
And gave Google a tax cut. Perfect. Congressman, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Fox senior political analyst Brit Hume joins us now. Brit, do you think, and again, I feel like a hypocrite scolding anybody for making fun of Hillary Clinton, since I've done it so much and enjoyed it so deeply, but is that a winning strategy for a midterm campaign?
No, I wouldn't think so. It seems to me that she's really not around. I mean, she's somebody you can poke fun at in a campaign speech because she's had such a terrible time getting over her defeat and continues to cite all kinds of things and people to blame that are plainly not the main cause of her downfall. But making her the object or the principal subject of your campaign doesn't make any sense at all. You have to run on your record, or you have to run against something that the current Democratic Party, as you pointed out, is promoting. And there's all sorts of things that the current Democratic Party is promoting that Republicans could run against. And I assume that in the fullness of time, they'll come to their senses and begin to do that. Just talk about running against Hillary seems to me to make little sense.
There does seem to be this the posture of the Democrats and Republicans has always struck me as very different. Democrats seem to really believe that they're right and that they're on God's side. They don't believe in God, but they're on whatever. They're on the right side. And Republicans feel sort of half embarrassed about their ideas. Am I imagining that, or have you perceived it?
No, I don't. Well, I wouldn't put it quite that way, but I think you're onto something, Tucker. That Democrats fervently believe not only that they're on the right and moral side of the issue, but that is the only side that a thinking person could be on.
Right.
And it is
That's
therefore unthinkable that anyone would resist them on the things that they're trying to do, because they're for the good things. They're for the cause of good. And therefore there must be something corrupt and wrong and immoral about those who oppose them. They really don't see and appreciate both sides of the issue, and of any issue really in the current atmosphere, which accounts to some extent for the poison. Now look, there's plenty of cynicism about Democrats on the Republican side. People who believe that, you know, that all the Democratic schemes to provide aid and comfort to the lame, the halt, the blind, the poor, and the underprivileged are all really campaign schemes to try to get reelected and to try to basically pay off groups of constituents. I don't believe that. I think that may have that effect in some instances, but Democrats are genuinely feel compassion for these people, and they think that their remedies are the right remedies. So we end up of an argument when neither side trusts the other. That's where we are.
Interesting. What do you think I mean, as of today, and things, this is a dynamic moment, obviously, but what do you think the chances are of a Democratic takeover of the House, and who would be the Speaker? It won't be Pelosi again, I don't think, if they win. Who would it be?
I don't know who it would be. I think you're right that the Democrats are prepared to move on to a new generation of leaders. I'm just not sure who it would be. But I would say this about the fall election. It's still reasonably early. If the election were held today, I think there'd be a big blue wave. But it won't be. And we don't know who all the candidates are going to be. And the math is very much, in the Senate side, is helpful to the Republicans. In the House side, of course, it never changes. It's all seats up. And there's always political gravity against the party that has the White House in a president's first midterm election.
Yeah.
And that is where we are. And you take that and combine it with the fact that the president approval numbers are upside down, as they have long been, and you have what appears to be a formula for a big win by the out party, the Democrats. But that might not happen. It did not happen in George W. Bush's first midterm, largely because of the post 9/11 atmosphere in which his leadership was generally well received, and it helped him and his party. I don't know that we have a cause here that would replicate that. So, I mean, I think it's uphill for the Republicans all the way, no doubt about it. And they would be well advised, as you suggest, Tucker, to find something to run on and or run against more powerful than running against the now out of office, out of luck, beaten candidate Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. If the election were held today, people would be very confused because it's April. But I agree with you completely. Britt, it's great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, the Democratic Party's agenda already includes curtailing gun rights, opening the borders. Could reparations join that list? Apparently, it's about to, and we'll discuss it. Plus, we'll take you back to the state dinner where the Trumps are hosting the French president and his wife. Live coverage of the president's toast in just a moment. The president about to give a toast at a state dinner where he and the First Lady are welcoming the French president and the First Lady of France. We'll take you there in just a minute. In the meantime, the Democratic Party has a lot of goals for you. Suspend all immigration enforcement, abolish all gender distinctions, take away your guns. But the party now has another goal, at least one being discussed in private: reparations. Democracy Alliance is a group of rich Democratic donors. It's a big deal. Billionaires George Soros and Tom Steyer are donors to it. An invitation to the group's spring dinner held last week fantasized that by 2022, not that far from now, reparations could be a top item on the Democratic agenda. And it may be, by the way. John Summers is a former communications director for Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader of Nevada, or as they call it, Nevada. And he joins us tonight. John, thanks for coming on.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So I like this story because it actually allows us to have an honest conversation about what this would mean, about reparations. And by the way, I'm open-minded about this as I am about all things. But how would it work? Would immigrants, and there are a lot of immigrants in this country, newly arrived from, say, Mexico, have to pay for reparations?
Well, let's take a step back if we're actually going to have an honest conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. Why not?
And talk about how we're actually not anti-God. We aren't for eliminating the borders. We do see genders. So I think a lot of the things that you're creating a great stereotype, and I think you're doing a great job.
Well, you know, I
of using
appreciate
scare tactics, which is typical for your side.
I appreciate that. Actually,
but we should actually have the honest conversation.
I don't know if you're a nightly viewer of the show, but I think we kind of prove all that night to night, but I encourage you to watch. But let's just get to this, reparations. So this is one of those ideas that people dismissed as crazy or whatever. Then Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's kind of the poet laureate of the left, wrote this famous piece in The Atlantic calling for it. Now it's on the Democracy Alliance agenda. This could be real. So what are the details? It's a sincere question. Millions of immigrants in this country, are they going to be required to pay for reparation? And
you're right. It was on that Democracy Alliance agenda, along with talking about ways to strengthen rural women, how to put an end to gun violence here in America, raising the minimum wage.
Actually, it's just it's
there
stuff
were a
like
number
that
of issues that were discussed
that makes
there,
people not take the party seriously. But whatever.
Let's go to your topic
let's get to,
of reparations,
for the third time to
which
the point.
which I think, frankly, I feel awkward talking about, because here we are, two white guys who have no idea what the African American experience has actually been in this
slow
country.
down. I'm an American citizen and a taxpayer, and I have every bit as much right to talk about government policy as any American. So I reject your presupposition out of hand.
But you have not experienced that hurt. But let's set aside the hurt.
Here's what I am as an American citizen, and I have a right and an obligation to talk about and understand the policies my government may impose, including this one. So let's get detailed about it. Who would pay? Who would benefit?
I don't know. That's one of those things that we don't have the details on whoever's putting forward that policy prescription. But what I actually think reparations don't go far enough. I actually think what we need to do is look forward to policies that will actually change the dynamic in this country and level the playing field for African Americans. So we're opening the gateway and the pathway to the middle class.
Well, of course I couldn't agree more. So let's just start with one, and maybe we can agree on this. Refugee resettlement almost exclusively happens in poor working class communities. Refugees come over from Somalia or wherever, and they move into Lowell, Mass. and Lewiston, Maine, and poor places. Let's make a pact that we move them only into Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Northwest D.C., the Upper East Side of Manhattan, only places where rich people live. Marin County ought to get $1 million or so. Why don't we do that? Why don't we start there? Would you be for that?
I don't think that would actually be the solution. I think the solution, as I was saying, would actually be to pass policies that level the playing field.
Why wouldn't that level the playing field?
So we provide equal opportunity to achieving the middle class for every American.
If I'm coming, slow down. If I'm coming from Somalia and you move me into some dead, depressing mill town with no mills, my chances of success are much less than if I move into, say, your neighborhood. Why shouldn't I go to the schools that your kids go to? Why shouldn't I live in Kentfield, California?
Well, I think it's awfully kind of you to offer housing for some of these folks.
Oh, because rich liberals don't want to